In this video, what we're going to do is we're going to use some K5 styling and actually show you how you can use Amplify Classroom across a variety of subjects, including English and science and those types of things, with a little bit of different twist on an activity that we're going to build here. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to make something like this. Let me show you what I mean. In this activity, what students are asked to do is they're asked to fill in some different parts of speech here, like a verb. Let's use run, maybe an adjective, I don't know, red, maybe another verb like jump, adverb here, an adjective, and finally another noun. And so by adding in those parts of speech, using kind of some of the magic behind the scenes, notice that those things are actually carried over to build out this sentence or this narrative based on student ideas. I call this like a Mad Lib activity where students are coming up with those parts of speech and then they fill in the sentence and it's created again based on their ideas. And so we're going to try to do that. We're going to try to make something here, show you how to use some of the different styling, and also build an activity that maybe fit better in an English or science or a different type of classroom, depending on what you're teaching and what you're doing. So let's do it. Let's hop back over here and let's go ahead and create our new activity. And so what I'm going to do is, of course, go over to my stuff and create an activity. And I called it Mad Lib. I'm just going to continue with that. Let's call it a Mad Lib here. That's what it reminds me of, something that I did in my youth. And then for our styling, this is one time I'm actually going to change it here. Notice we have these different stylings, and by changing it, it changes the button, it changes the appearance, and there'll actually be some kind of directions on what is actually happening here. But we're going to use this 4-5 styling. And the reason I like doing it with some of these types of activities is it makes the text bigger, makes it a little bit easier to read, or maybe you're working with younger students and you want to have the ability to do that. So note, you have that in Amplify Classroom to be able to make those changes. And that's what we're going to do here. We're going to use this 4-5 styling and we're going to create our new activity. And so it's really a pretty simple one to build. We just have two screens. They're connected using just a couple of components. And so we're going to do that. So on the first screen, I had this table that had the list of stuff that students would input. And so obviously to create a table, I need to come over here and find the table and drag it over. And then when I had that table, what I did is I had two columns, which is the kind of the standard thing we have here. You can add more if you want to, but we're going to go ahead, and the first column I called word type. And then the second column there I called word. And so those were the two that I had. And then I described the different types of words that I want students to enter. So I had a verb and an adjective. Of course, you can be as descriptive as you want. Another verb, an adverb, an adjective, and then I think finally there, a noun. So those were the 6 things that we asked students to enter. Now notice one thing here, when I type these in, it kind of has this italicized or kind of funny looking font. When I'm not wanting to do math, when I'm wanting to do maybe something that is more, words or just things like that, I need to change this to text instead of math input. And you can do that with this right arrow right here. So if I click on the right arrow next to word type, notice I can add those columns. I can delete this column, but one thing I'm going to do is change this to format as text. And notice how the words there actually look a little bit better. That kind of funny styling is gone. And this is really prompting students to enter things that are words. It's really going to make it an easier transition for students when they're actually entering their words and for them to be carried over. And so I want to do the same thing, and I'm going to do it on the second column here because they're not entering math, they're entering words. And I want to change the same thing, format as text. You can always change it back to math, but we're going to leave it as text because we want students to enter those words there. Now, the last thing I need to do on the screen is I need to name this component because I'm going to connect it and carry these ideas over and carry my student brilliance to the next screen. So I'm going to just call this table 1. Of course, you can name it whatever you want to, but for simplicity's sake, I'm going to call it table 1. And now I'm going to build out my second screen here. So I'm going to hit plus, and then the only thing that I had here was actually a note component that is what that text will appear upon. So I'm going to drag that note component over. And now I'm going to go into the computation layer first, and I'm going to go ahead and connect these. I could add my sentence first if I wanted to, but I'm going to do it this way because I think it's going to make things just a little bit easier for us. And so I'm going to use the computation layer here up at the top right, the 2 arrows, and go inside my computation layer. And now remember, I had 6 things, and I want to be able to connect those 6 things over into the screen here. And so that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to go in, and I need to first remember what I had there, and it was a verb first. And so I'm going to call this verb 1, and I'm going to put an equal sign, and I'm going to call this. Notice when I hit T, table 1 automatically comes up because I named that component, which is great. I'm going to hit enter and then a dot. And notice once I hit that period or that dot, now my options come up, and I want the content. I don't want the numerical value. We're pulling over words. I want the content. And then that first one is 1, 2. So row 1, column 2 there is what we're pulling that first set of information from. And so the first thing I had was verb 1. The next thing I had was adjective 1. And again, I'm going to do the same thing. Call it adjective 1 equals. I hit T. Notice table 1 comes up. I'm going to hit enter, dot, cell content. And now that one appears in the second one. So 2, 2. And do the same thing for the next one here. We had verb 2 was the next thing in my list or in my table. And I'm going to call this table 1, cell content 3, 2. And notice we're just kind of rinse and repeating at this point, just making sure I'm naming things correctly and pulling it from the correct location in the table. So then I had an adverb equals T brings up table 1 dot cell content 4, 2. And then we had adjective. I'm going to call this 2 instead of adjective 1. Table 1 dot cell content 5, 2. And then finally, we finished it off with a noun. And of course, you can make this whatever you want it to be. You can pull over a ton of them. You can pull over one of them, whatever you want it to be. Totally up to you to what you create here. But the last one, we had a noun, which was table 1, cell content 6, 2. And so now that I've got all my 6 things that I'm going to pull over from that table in screen 1, I need to put the text that's actually going to appear on the front of the screen and connect these kind of syncs these variables into what we actually have here. So let's hop back into the front of the note. And then I believe what I had written here for folks was, I'm going to put a space here. Today, I am going to, and then I think I had my first verb. And so to pull those things out from behind the computation layer, it's over here on the bottom right, kind of those squiggly brackets. And so I want verb 1 here. So let's kind of toggle down to verb 1. There we go. And then hit a dot. The other thing I'm going to do while I have it here, I'm going to go ahead and highlight it and hit underline it so that when it's kind of creates a blank or an underline that students know where their things went. You don't have to do this. It's just an optional thing, but you can kind of select this and put an underline on it. So now that will be underlined, and it'll also create a little dash when a student hasn't entered anything yet. I think it helps a little bit for clarity, but you don't have to. It's just an optional thing, but I'm going to do it here. And then lastly, I had my next sentence. So my, and then we had an adjective, friend wants to, and then verb 2, pulling these in, space, and then an adverb to the, and then we had our second adjective, and then our noun. And notice too, I'm putting a space in between them. Again, you can highlight if you want to and put that kind of underline on it if you want to here, but just an optional thing that you can totally do if you want to create it that way. And so I'm gonna leave it there. You can go back and style it however you want to. You can even highlight it and give it bold, whatever you want to do as far as styling with it. But now that we've got this built and created, we can hit preview. Notice it created that space on the one I put the underline in, and now you can test it out by putting in your verbs. So run, adjective, red, another verb, jump, an adverb, quickly, an adjective, whatever we want to call it, I don't know, big, and noun, pizza, there we go. And boom, notice that those words appeared. Notice the one that I put the underlining on, it creates the underlining for it. Totally up to you, again, how you style it, but notice how those ideas taken from the student actually appear here on the screen. Like I said, get creative with it. There's lots of different ways you could tie this to content or build this to make this how you want it to. So let your creativity kind of soar a little bit, and then also let students be creative. I think it's a great way to do it. And go ahead when you're finished, you can hit that publish button. It will create it for you. And I would encourage you on something like this, let students enter in that screen one, just paste them into that first screen, let them put their ideas in it, and then unlock it. And look at all the different screens and different things students come up with and create as you're building this. And of course, when you make it, you'll get that nice kind of K5 styling look. You'll see it's bigger, the text is bigger, and of course, it's a little bit more age appropriate for students as well. So hopefully you enjoyed this look at another way that you can use Activity Builder to make some really meaningful content for students.